Welcome back, everyone. Sheepdog Smokey here, and as you can see, this is yet another in the multiple instances of back and forth on immigration. California judge blocks Trump's policy forcing asylum seekers to stay in Mexico. A federal district court judge in the Ninth Circuit on Monday issued a preliminary injunction blocking the Trump administration's new policy of returning asylum seekers to Mexico as they wait for an immigration hearing or an immigration court to hear their case. But the order won't immediately go into effect. The so-called Remain in Mexico policy was one of the primary innovations of former Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, whom President Trump announced on Sunday will be leaving her position after 16 months in the job. Judge Richard Seaborg in San Francisco granted a request by civil liberties groups to halt the practice while their lawsuit moves forward. He put the decision on hold until Friday to give U.S. officials the chance to appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which, thanks to Trump's aggressive judicial appointments, is now more friendly to conservatives than it has been in more than 3 decades. The launch of the policy in San Diego, at the nation's busiest border crossing, marked an unprecedented change to the U.S. asylum system, government officials and asylum experts said. Families seeking asylum have typically been released into the U.S. with notices to appear in court, and conservatives have charged they often can't be relied on to show up. The American Civil Liberties Union, Southern Poverty Law Center, and Center for Gender and Refugee Studies, which brought the lawsuit on behalf of 11 asylum applicants and several other organizations, praised the ruling in a statement on Monday. The court strongly rejected the Trump administration's unprecedented and illegal policy of forcing asylum seekers to return to Mexico without hearing their claims, Judy Rabinovitz, director of the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project, said in a statement. Try as it may, the Trump administration cannot simply ignore our laws in order to accomplish its goal of preventing people from seeking asylum in the United States. Ms. Rabinovitz, no one is being prevented from seeking asylum. They are being prevented from vanishing into the country and never being seen again. If I show up to your door and I bang on the door until you open it and force my way in and then say I need asylum from the people chasing me, are you going to just let me vanish into your house and avoid you for years on end while you try to tell me whether you've decided to grant or deny my request of you? Yes, that is a private citizen's home, not a country, but it is the same thing. The doorway to your home is the border. I just crashed through that border illegally because I didn't wait for your permission to enter. I then told you I want asylum, and I then vanished into your home and avoided you for years because I don't want to hear you say, no, your request has been rejected. A request is simply that. You can go to any American embassy or consulate and request asylum. They do not have to house and feed you. We do not have to allow them in to vanish into the just into the ether until we finally catch them because they've been reported for something, from working illegally to God only knows what, and then they get to say, well, I'm waiting on an asylum hearing. And we say, well, that was 5 years ago. You didn't show up. Okay, it was rejected because you didn't show up. Because then the ACLU will say, well, he didn't know when the hearing was. And the government will say, we tried to contact him where we dropped him off. He had vanished. Well, he was afraid he'd be denied. That's not grounds for running away. The Trump administration says the policy responds to a crisis at the southern border that has overwhelmed the ability of immigration officials to detain migrants. Growing numbers of families are fleeing poverty and gangs in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Last year, the Justice Department eliminated gang violence and domestic abuse as possible justification for seeking asylum. Trump, earlier this week, flatly stated that the asylum program is a scam, often abused by thousands of migrants with phony stories hoping to take advantage of U.S. law. Asylum law, conservatives point out, is intended to shield individuals from near certain death or persecution on account of limited factors like religious or political affiliation, not poor living conditions or economic despair. Most asylum applicants are ultimately rejected for having insufficient or unfounded personalized fear of persecution, following a full hearing of their case before an asylum officer or immigration judge. Some of the roughest people you have ever seen, Trump said, referring to the fraudulent asylum applicants, people that look like they should be fighting in the UFC. The lawsuit on behalf of 11 asylum seekers from Central America and legal advocacy groups says the Trump administration is violating U.S. law by failing to adequately evaluate the dangers that migrants face in Mexico. I'm sorry, if they fled Central American countries like Honduras, Guatemala, or El Salvador, they fled the country they were trying to get away from. They weren't fleeing Mexico. They happily trooped through Mexico, violating Mexico's immigration laws and doing God only knows what on the way, to get to our border where they demanded of us, let me in and let me stay. It also accuses Homeland Security and immigration officials of depriving migrants of their right to apply for asylum by making it difficult or impossible for them to do so. American Embassy, American U.S. Consulate, they can go to those and they can apply. You can't tell the United States government saying the word asylum is all they have to do. They don't have to give you their name. They don't have to tell you where they're from. They don't have to tell you why. They say asylum, you got to let them in. Wrong. Asylum is not a magical spell taught at the Central American version of Hogwarts. You come to the U.S. border, you request asylum. You then explain why you are requesting asylum. You are then told a hearing will be scheduled. That is not making it difficult or impossible to request. That is following the rules of logic. Under the new policy, asylum seekers are not guaranteed interpreters or lawyers and don't get to argue to a judge that they face the potential of persecution or torture if they are sent back to Mexico, Judy Rabinovitz, an attorney for the ACLU, said at a March court hearing. You don't get to demand that the hearing happen right then and there, and that we provide you a lawyer, we provide you an interpreter, and we give you a judge that's going to say, oh, you're still requesting it? This isn't your hearing? Oh, well, fine, we'll do the hearing now. You request it from ICE or CBP. They then forward your request to the appropriate people who will schedule a hearing. Seberg appeared skeptical of the lawsuit's argument and that the administration misapplied a U.S. law that allows the return of immigrants to Mexico. The ACLU and other groups that are suing say the law does not apply to asylum seekers who cross the border illegally or arrive at a border crossing without proper documents. The judge also questioned the Justice Department's argument that asylum seekers sent back to Mexico are not eligible for certain protections, such as a hearing before an immigration judge. I would love to see a citation on that, because that sounds like an ACLU idiot saying, well, they're sending them back so we don't have to give them a hearing. Wrong. We're telling them, wait here. We'll come get you when there's a hearing. The administration hopes that making asylum seekers' way to Mexico will discourage weak claims and help reduce an immigration court backlog of more than 800,000 cases. Justice Department Attorney Scott Stewart said there is a process to protect immigrants who could face harm in Mexico. All 11 plaintiffs in the lawsuit are represented by attorneys. 10 have already appeared for court hearings, he said. Border Patrol arrests, the most widely used gauge of illegal crossings, have risen sharply over the last year, but are relatively low in historical terms after hitting a 46-year low in 2017. The launch of the policy followed months of delicate talks between the U.S. and Mexico. Mexicans and children traveling alone are exempt from it. See? If you're fleeing Mexico, you're not sent back to Mexico. If you're fleeing a country that is south of Mexico, you've fled that country successfully. Congratulations. Wait here. The long liberal Ninth Circuit, which has a sweeping purview over 9 western states, has long been a thorn in the side of the Trump administration. Thorn in the side of anyone who's not a rabid liberal. Just weeks ago, the Ninth Circuit broke ranks with another federal appellate court and ruled that a Sri Lankan man who failed his initial asylum screening had the constitutional right to go before a judge, not a citizen, no constitutional rights, threatening to clog the immigration court system further with tens of thousands of similar claims per year and setting up an all but certain Supreme Court showdown. I'm personally right there with the people saying, let's go to SCOTUS. We have had judges who have said, you cannot arrest people if they say they want asylum. Now, if they get here and they get in illegally and they start saying asylum, 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 we can't say, okay, wait where you are. The audacity of these judges. I can almost guarantee you that if we let them continue and we don't win on this, we're soon going to hear, well, now you have to give them a house, and you have to give them food, and a car, and a job, and school supplies, and clothes, and cable TV, and a 60-inch plasma 4K. Because, of course, we want them to be comfortable and feel safe while they're here. Meanwhile, we have people like Zarate, who has been or was deported multiple times, who kills Kate Steinle after burgling a car to steal a firearm, apparently, and is not convicted of murder, which he did. And Kate Steinle's parents are told they cannot sue the city that protected this killer. I've not actually spoken on whether the Ninth Circuit should be broken up, and that's because, honestly, I was of the mind that it shouldn't, that we should go after these activist judges. But at this point, break it up. It is nothing more now than a cabal of far left-leaning activists. And they need to be shown that they are not superior to the executive branch of the government. Yes, in this one case, the judge issuing the supposed injunction is waiting until Friday to let the U.S. government argue that, well, the law says this, we're doing this. It's amazing to me. But I've talked long enough. Pardon me. April in Texas. Allergies are wonderful. But I've talked long enough on this. Let me know your thoughts, definitely. Remember, keep it civil and keep it classy. We do not learn from arguments. We learn from debate. If you like this video, please hit like, and please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. I am planning several new things that I'm going to be bringing that are not just news related or news articles, and you'll want to make sure you are the first to hear about those. Until the next time, though, everyone have a wonderful day.